I give them a historical background, which we don't have time for. The reason I give them a historical background because everything started in Hungary much later than anywhere else. I don't know if you were aware of that. Like nothing really, in Budapest, and I'm from Budapest, nothing actually happened and went bad until 44. So there's a huge difference between the rest of the other Eastern European countries and Hungary. And I'm not going to go into details, but the reason for that was that Hungary was actually Hitler's ally. And so because of that, it was treated a little differently. Plus, in Budapest, the Jews were running everything. More than 50% of all the doctors were Jews, 60% of all the lawyers were Jews, the bankers were Jews, journalists. So when Hitler started to insist that they should be shipped out the same way as every other Jew in Europe, the governor of Hungary at the time was reluctant to do that. And things were not too bad, but then when Hitler found out that this particular governor, which by the way his name was Horthy, and he was an admiral, which is really interesting because that's a nautical word, right? Admiral. And Hungary doesn't even have a big ocean or sea or anything or a ship. But anyway, so he decided that the Germans were losing the war. This is 1944 already. It was evident that they were losing the war, and so he started making overtures towards the Americans to have some kind of agreement and get out of the war. And Hitler got wind of it, and at that time, in March of 1944, they came in and invaded the country. So until then, there were no Germans around. So they invaded the country, and that's when everything started going very bad for the Jews. Now, I'll tell you about my personal experience. I come from middle-class family. We had a very lovely family life. I was an only child. And my father, who was working, my father was a very accomplished, all kinds of ways person. But his major job was working in the hydro in some sort of official capacity. Besides that, he was taking courses. He was almost finished with a law degree, and he was playing the piano, and he was dancing and teaching ballet. So he did a lot of things, but by 41, they had to start, the Hungarian Jewish men had to start going to labor camps. Do you know what labor camps were? Mm-hmm. That they were supposed to be the army, but this was army without any weapons. So they were sent out to the worst, absolutely worst places. Like they were sent to the front, where their job was to get rid of the mines, which was a very unhealthy job, you can imagine. And many men, pardon? But they were blown up. Yeah.
Get rid of the mines, I can hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just ask me if you don't. And so he was going to the labor camp, and the way it worked was that he was sent out 4 months at a time. And so he went 4 months, and I honestly, I was 7 years old, and I really don't know exactly where they sent him or what he did. But he would be away for 4 months, and during that time, my mother got his salary, so our life really did not change that much. You know, like I had a nanny, and my mother, who was a homemaker, and it was fine, and he kept coming back, and then he had to go out again. So that was from 41. But my mother and I had a very pleasant and a very, peaceful and nice existence in Budapest. Now, I also want to just interject that the outlying communities, like the villages and so on, outside of Budapest, that was a different story. Because they were starting to round up the Jews and put them into ghettos already starting in 41. But the Budapest Jews were not touched. And just to